Welcome to the Swedish Junior Hockey Podcast. Today we have a new, well, not a new junior player, but a Swedish player, Kevin Marx-Noren. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Newly committed, I guess we should say, to Northern Michigan University D1 NCAA.
Yeah.
Or when was the commitment?
Yeah. So I committed. I was there for a visit just after the season ended, and I committed about the 1st of June, so like a month ago.
All right. Well, first of all, congratulations. Here's kind of what I wanted to talk about, because I think that you've got a unique background that I want to harness. I kind of poached you a little bit because I was doing actually a little research on elite prospects on Swedish players in the North American Hockey League. And then I saw that most of them that I started looking at was going back to go to play in Sweden. And then, but you are choosing the route of going to college here, which I'm a fan of. And so, we got 2 years of junior experience here and a couple of years of juniors in Sweden. So, and now college. So we got a lot of things to talk about.
Yep. Yep.
So, first of all, this is the most professional background that any guest have had, that has his own lit setup in the background. So before we get going, I know that you got big plans, and tell us a little bit about what's in store.
Yeah. So we got a couple microphones here and a nice setup to potentially start up a podcast in the future. And so yeah, it's we haven't started yet, and so
you know, so when you watch Spittin' Chicklets, they call the Chicklets bump, and for people that are guests of this podcast, they get a bump and they get this boost of popularity. So maybe the same thing will happen here.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah. So a little bit of geographical. You're sitting in Knivsta. So if you Google Knivsta, a little bit outside of Arlanda, which is the main airport in Sweden, is that about right?
Yep.
And I see. So you grew up there, and I guess, did you play? What was your youth organization there that you grew up playing in?
I played in Almtuna Is, which is in Uppsala here in Sweden. So it's about 15 minutes from where I'm at right now.
Okay.
And I played there every single youth year except for U14. I played 1 year with Arlanda Wings. They had some better ice times and more practice opportunities and stuff. And they had a pretty good team that year. So that was a great year too. So I had 1 year with them, but otherwise every youth year was with Almtuna.
And then for those who don't know, Uppsala or Almtuna is how far from Stockholm? Maybe 45 minutes?
Uppsala from Stockholm is about 45 minutes, I would say.
Yeah.
From where I'm at, it's about 25, 30 minutes.
Okay, great. Yeah. All right. And then if we jump into your background, hockey gymnasium. So I saw that you played TV puck tournament for, is that Uppland, or who did you? Yeah, Uppland.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not part of Stockholm North. It's its own.
Yeah, it's its own region. Exactly.
Yeah. So that was back in 1718. Doesn't seem like that long ago, but yeah, a lot of people, they don't know anything about TV puck tournament over here, and big deal in Sweden. So how did you end up in Västerås? So it's actually, my birth town is in Västerås. My dad worked for AB or ASEA, which is now ABB. But so how did you end up there? I guess you had, what was the decision to go there?
Yeah, so I played for Almtuna, and I was interested in Västerås. It's pretty close. It's only an hour away.
Yeah.
And so I talked to them. Their coach came out and watched a game for when we played, and he liked what he saw and stuff. And then I came over there for a visit, and I kind of, yeah, looked around the rink, looked at the school with him, and he kind of showed me around the city and stuff. And yeah, and I practiced with them that day too, I think, and got a feel for it. And then I got, well, a contract, I would say,
Yep.
for to play with Västerås. And for me, I mean, it was I was 15 years old, just turning 16, moving away from home, and I saw it. My parents saw it as a good opportunity to like grow as a person too, kind of learning the basics of, yeah, living by yourself. And they also had a super elite junior 20 national team,
Yep.
which they transferred from super elite to national, which is the same league but different name now. And that was also a good thing that they had, because you know you want to compete against the best to become your best player yourself. And so it turned out to be a great setup. And so that's kind of my decision to why I went to Västerås.
How big of a deal was it for you? I mean, different people have different experiences. How was it for you to move away then, 15 years old? Not too far away, but still you're living on your own, and
Yeah.
now it's all of a sudden serious.
Yeah. No, yeah. So at the start, there was a lot of things. I had to call my parents, how to wash clothes, like, those basic things. But then you kind of learn a lot of that was regular home stuff, how to cook food, how to wash clothes, how to do the dishes, and
Yep.
all those things. And so at first it was a little bit, you realize how much responsibility you gotta take on your own, and no one else is gonna wake you up in the morning. When you go to school, I mean, you don't have your mom by your side maybe to help you out. You kind of take help if you needed help from teammates. And so I think it was really nice to live by yourself. It's kind of calm and all that stuff. When you go to bed, it's very quiet. And so there was definitely pros with living by myself. But then, of course, I missed my family, and my parents usually came over. My mom every other weekend, my father every other weekend, to kind of visit my first 2 3 years when I played there. And so it wasn't too bad.
So did you have your own apartment then? Or did
Yeah.
you? Okay, so they had,
Yeah.
that was part of the deal with the school and the
Yeah.
program.
Yeah.
How also curious too, since you're now going into college, what was your, so going from ninth grade into hockey gymnasium, how was your view on academics back then?
So I think you realize now how important the academics were that you received in the gymnasium, which is pretty much like high school, to be able to, from me, to move from gymnasium now to college.
Yeah.
So I always had to show my transcript to each school. And when I talked to different schools, and yeah, so they always looked at my grades to make sure that they're good enough. And
What
so
was your
it's very
which
important to
which program did you go into?
Northern Michigan.
But I mean in gymnasium.
Oh, I went to social studies.
Okay.
Um, so
Just,
it's a preparation for university.
and the reason why I bring that up is some of your teammates chose the vocational side, perhaps electrician,
Yeah.
carpentry, a little bit easier road from a standpoint of academics.
Yeah. And so now they had to, I had a couple of friends that did that. And then I have a friend that went to Michigan State. And so he had to add a bunch of courses to do after he finished school. So either you can choose to do one of those studies, but then you have to add courses. So
Yeah.
for me, it was I always had a goal in mind, and I kind of saw my journey to go to college, and it was something that I wanted to do and I aspired to do. So I knew kind of what I had to do and what I had to study to be able to move on to university. So that's why I kind of chose social studies. And I also thought it was very interesting to learn about people and kind of the psychology side and all that stuff, because you implement that a lot into your game. So.
Yeah. And then I'm looking, so if I'm looking at your elite prospects here, so right away you go straight into J18 Elite, which is now called Region.
Yeah.
I can't stand that name. I liked Elite much better. But
Yeah.
and then second year, breakout year, 34 games, 39 points. You also got to play a couple of games in the J20 Super Elite, which, you know, how was that right away? Did you practice the whole season with them, or did you just get some practices with J20 your second year? So you were then 17.
Yeah, later on in the season, I practiced a lot more with them, and yeah, so I mean, it's really well how they actually set up,
Yeah.
like the juniors in Sweden. So the team, we literally had our locker rooms beside each other,
Yep.
and one team practiced, the next team went on right after. So it was one team worked out while the other team was practicing. So it was very easy for a player to stay 2 practices and practice both sessions. And the school, everybody goes to the same school.
Yep.
And so, and it's like moving up a ladder, from U16 to J18, J20, and some players move on to the senior teams. Some players, that's when usually everybody starts to kind of do their own thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a great ladder, and I think so. I started the second year, like you said, I started practicing more with J20, and then I got a couple games there, and so that was nice, you know, get a feel for the next level before going to the next level the next season.
And then I just now realized, so 2021 COVID year.
Yeah.
Right. So your last, no, so this would have been your first year J20 was your COVID year.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So walk us through. So was it you started and then season ends?
Pretty much. And so every time you kind of move into the next level, it takes a couple games usually to get used to it.
Yep.
So that's when I started working with my mental coach, Andy Svärd, and that kind of picked up my game a lot. And just as I started picking up my game, starting getting a lot of ice time, that's when the season shut down. So I think the last 4 games I had 5 points, and I started playing a lot better, playing wise. And before that, I was struggling a little bit with anxiety 4 games. So
Yeah.
that's why I started working with the mental coach there, because in practices I was doing so well, and then games hit, and I was like, you know, like you but that's also when I realized how much I actually wanted to perform, how much I like really wanted to move on to for the senior teams to see me play, and that I wanted it so bad, because that's when you can kind of like squeeze your shoulders and your hands a little bit too hard because you want it so bad. So when I started working with my mental coach, that's when I kind of understood the basics behind why everything like that happens, and how to control it, how to kind of breathe and feel relaxed in the moment. And I started picking up my game. Literally, I went to him during the week, the next week, and I think I had 4 points in 2 games or something like that. So from 0 points in like 8 games to 4 points in 2 games, and not just points wise, playing wise, and the comfort that he kind of gave me the first, and I still work with him the first couple of games there. And so now it's totally shifted. So for me now, it's more like, I think pressure creates diamonds kind of.
Yeah.
So I really enjoy games now. I kind of perform better. It kind of brings me energy instead of brings me down. So
I mean, it's tough. You're 18 years old. You're competing against the best of the best, and you know you're being molded. And yeah, I mean, kudos to you to kind of working through that. So
yeah.
how let's talk about then. I mean, that's just such a tough time with COVID, and nobody knows anything about at that time. It's so much uncertainty. And at what point did you start thinking about, all right, I'm going to go and play North American Juniors? Or did it start there, or did you already have kind of like?
That's so. I work with a guy in Sweden. Mike is his name, and he's always been pushing me to go over to the United States since I was 10 years old. So that's kind of like shift my focus to purely want to go the college route. And so every year I put up goals for my season, kind of what I want to accomplish and how I want to move on to the next level. So my idea was to go U16 to J18 Elite, J18 Elite, Super Elite, finish school, go to play either NAHL or USHL, and from there to college, because I've always been pushed to do that. And I only have one step left, and it's to NHL. So from now I followed my plan, and I hope I can keep doing that all the way through.
Yeah. So how did that go about then? I mean, that's kind of a, because a lot of Swedes are oh no, I don't want to take that. I don't want to take that step, very comfort zone. The safe thing is just to do what's natural. So did your parents talk about your parents, and how did that discussion, what's your relationship with your parents and that discussion back a few years ago?
Taking the step to United States.
Yeah.
Yeah, so my parents has always been very supportive. They are keep supporting me right now too, and I mean, amazing parents. And yeah, they've always said that they want me to do what I love to do and what I think should be best for myself. And so they support me with whatever I choose to do, kind of.
Yeah.
And so I know my mom, of course, when I left when I was 15 years old to play in Westeros, that, I mean, it's of course kind of sad for her that I left,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
at the same time, she feels happy that I am doing what I want to do, and if I can succeed within a sport that I play, that's my dream, and that's her dream for me too. So I think they've always been supportive, and they have never ever said that they want me to do something else than what I want to do. So that's kind of nice to have that behind me.
So we're recording this, early July, and we're going to release this right about the time when you got main camps. And so walk me through, let's talk about that side of, did you have the knowledge of how that process worked, about, okay, uncertainty in Swedish juniors, and so you graduated from your high school or your gymnasium, and then you could have played another year, but it's uncertainty. So then you went over. Did you come over and practice with any of the teams back then and do the kind of spring thing?
In the States?
Yeah.
No. So Mike, that I worked with since I was a kid, that always pushed me to get over, he was the guy that helped me to get over. So he has a bunch of contacts over there in college, in NHL, in juniors, and he was the guy that helped me to get over. So I got tendered.
Okay, so you got tendered. Okay.
Yeah, so, and I did not go to a main camp there. I went to the training camp, and I did not know about the process at all. So this is the big shock for me, right? So in Sweden, you kind of make a team. You kind of write a contract during juniors, and you can play as bad as you want. You're still going to be a part of the team, and that's just how it is. And as I got to the United States, it was like, okay, now this is a business. This is how the coaches keep feeding their families. You got to play really well, otherwise you're going to get sent to the NCDC, maybe the NA3HL.
Yep.
And so it was like, this is now my job, and I got to put my full effort and everything into it. I did it before too, but it was not the same kind of pressure and sense. So it's really good that I started working with my mental coach there to understand the situation, and we usually plan before every season. And he kind of gave me a heads up too, since he worked with a lot of good players like Jesper Bratt and other NHL players, and a lot of goalies especially, that stand in the net for so long without anyone talking to them for a whole game. So it's a lot of mental game there. But but yeah, I didn't know about the process at all, and how main camp work, how you go from main camp to training camp, and from training camp there's still guys getting cut
But so
before making the team.
how were you able to bypass the main camp?
Oh, no, so they usually, not every single team, they don't send every guy to main camp.
Okay.
Some guys come straight to training camps. I think main camp, I think everybody could go to.
Yeah.
I
I mean,
think
you have the tenders, draft picks, and free agents and returners, but the returners are typically
yeah,
they may go straight to camp. But the
yeah,
tenders, the tenders have a bigger shot at getting it than the draft picks. The first draft pick is the 11th tender, so to speak. So
yeah,
the reason I bring it up, because 2/3 of the people listening to this are from Sweden, and they
yeah,
don't, and it's foreign, and they come in and they have one plan, and they're going to they got tendered, they got drafted, and now I got the invite to come to main camp, and there's no plan B or plan C, and there's
yeah,
no guarantees to make the
yeah,
team. And there's a big difference of making the training camp roster and making the start of the season roster. And then
yeah.
you get all these people are getting cut from USHL that are coming down. So how was that for you?
Yeah, so I didn't even know how that worked. So I was there for training camp. I thought I made a team, like I had my tender and everything. And but I that was probably the best training camp I've ever done. I think I got in there. My first ice session was really bad. I hadn't been skating for 2 weeks before it. I had to travel to Croatia, and then I had to go from, because this is still COVID, right?
Oh,
So the countries in Europe, Schengen countries, couldn't go straight. So I had
that
to be
was
in
the
Croatia for
entry.
2 weeks before going to United States. So I wasn't on the ice at all. So my first session wasn't good. The second session was a little bit better, but then we started playing games to see. My first game, I got 2 goals, 1 assist. The second game, 2 goals, 1 assist. The third game, 2 goals, 1 assist. So I had 6 goals and like 4 assists in 3 games.
And
So
the
I was
and,
their number one,
and
kind
the
of their
coach
number
comes
one
up
guy.
to you and says, when are you going to turn
Yeah.
it on?
So Niagara University was there before the season even started, because our coaches like talked really well and all that stuff about me, and then but that was only training camp, right? And then the season started. Now you realize, oh, then how the NAHL actually, how good it is. And so we played Johnstown, which had a bunch of returners in preseason, and that's when the Niagara coach came out, and we lost 5 or 6-0. The next game 6-1, I think. And so that's when you realize how good that league was, and that's when you realize like how physical, how intense the American style was. Training camp was still intense and all that, but it was still training camp. It was a big difference actually joining the league the first couple of games, and you kind of got a little shock. So it took a little time, just like in J20, for me to adjust
Yep.
at the start of the season. And I self-realized, and I realized that I had to improve on my intensity. I realized that I had to, in United States, you don't have the big ice sheet. You have to move your feet constantly. Even if you're not necessarily skating faster, you just have to keep moving your feet to not be an easy target for the defenseman. I had to get more physical, better defensively. And so those are 2 things that I worked a lot with through my first year, a lot with during the summer before the second year, and now this second year in the NHL, I really found my growth. And so there was a lot of adjustments for sure.
So in the beginning, were there a lot of people that were like, did you realize that there's a lot of people that are, man, they're headhunting. They are, especially in the beginning of the year, they're just, they don't care. I'm just going to cream this guy.
Yeah. Yeah, no, Sweden it's extremely soft. Extremely soft. I came home after the season in the summer, and I started hitting guys, and they were like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, oh, so this is how we play in Sweden. We don't hit each other, kind of. So when I adjusted to the American style, but no, I mean, you finish every hit you can finish. That's just how the game is played in the States, and yeah, so it was an adjustment, and it took some time, but yeah, I really enjoy that play style now, and I've got used to.
Well, and let's address that too. I mean, you're not a small guy. You're 6'1", 190. How was when you first came in the league? Were you already that size, or have you grown the last couple of years?
I was 6'1", 190 when I got into the league. This year, I was 6'2", 205. So they haven't changed my league prospect.
Okay.
So I was the
You have to
heaviest
go in there
guy.
and do it yourself.
I was the heaviest guy on our roster, outfield player wise. And
Yeah.
I'm not the guy that I would say. I'm necessarily more of a offensive, like a Swedish style player, but with the weight and that stuff. And then I use my body as much as I can, but I'm not that extremely fourth line physical type player that kind of should have my weight, even of course more when you move up the ladder. But so yeah.
All right, and then let's talk about this. So you go from Jamestown, which is in New Jersey,
Yeah.
and did you get traded, or how did you end up in Kenai River?
Yeah. So I was there on ESTA visa. And so I had to move out of the country to renew my visa. So I went to Panama and went straight back. And the coach did not like that. He's like, "You're going on vacation mid-season." And I was like, "Well, I gotta keep myself legal in the country." And he's like, "Well, we can't have that. It's too dangerous if you're gonna have to go out in Christmas and then you're gonna have to go out late February to be able to come back for the playoffs." So he's like, "Well, this is not going to work." So coming back from Panama, and I get traded, and that's like, this is probably in my career the biggest. How should I explain? I'm it's the craziest thing that's happened, because in Sweden you're not used to getting traded. You play for one team, and I was like, well, what's going to happen now? So I'm sitting at my house. 2 days. I don't have a team. I go down to the rink. I practice on my own. I ask, can I still practice on my own and stuff? I brought back my old gear, practiced 2 days. And yeah, Kenai River wanted to pick me up. They needed a goal scorer. They had one win in like 11 games. And so he sent me there, and yeah, just packed my stuff, flew from Buffalo to Detroit, Detroit to, I think, Minneapolis, Anchorage, drove down 3.5 hours. That's like a 24-hour day. Coming to a cold Alaska, it's snowing, right? It's dark. I'm sleeping in this weird like facility my first night, and I'm just looking out the window, and I was like, is this really what hockey kind of brought to me? And I was like, but then during the flight, I watched Bruce Lee's documentary, and it's all about kind of being water and being adaptable to every situation. And so then after flying and all this stuff, I was kind of like, all right, I got to do the best to where I'm at. I can only control what I can control. And so as I moved to Kenai, and the next morning, I pre-game skate, and then we played Fairbanks. And I had a really good game. I didn't have any goals or any assists or anything, but I played first line, had a really good game, and from there I started playing pretty well in Kenai. It was not the best of teams that year.
Yeah.
But I played with some good guys, and I played pretty well there. And
So we talked a little bit offline. Fellow North Carolinian Ryan Finch was you and him were up there at the top of the scoring for that
yep.
team.
Yep.
So I had to give a shout out to Finchy there, but we need to have him on the podcast too for being a North Carolinian. Not that many. I'm sure he had the same.
Yeah, he always talks about that he's from North Carolina.
Going from North Carolina to it's probably a bigger shock going from North Carolina to Fairbanks or to Alaska. To go from Sweden.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe the guys from Skellefteå or Umeå or Luleå or something, not a big deal for them, but
yeah.
And so how did you end up? And then I guess playoffs, then they were picking Fairbanks picked you off to make
Yeah.
it.
So yeah, and so a lot of the O1s were leaving the team,
Yep.
and those were the guys that I was playing with that are better O1s, and I was kind of thinking like, why should I not see this as my last year? I want to win. Like I always strive to win the league, every team that I played for, and so I kind of went to the coaches and I requested a trade. And it was to be able to get seen by more teams. It was to be able to play playoff hockey. And then Fairbanks opened up a spot, and so I played my last weekend just before the trade deadline, and I got traded the last day of the deadline. And so I played with Kenai. I had 2 goals my last 2 games, 1 in each game. And I played probably one of the 2 best games I played with Kenai. Playing wise, and so I finished up very, very nice with them, and I was very appreciated to their coaching staff, and I think that they kind of helped me to be able to move on and do that and move to Fairbanks, who was a good team. I'm still very grateful for that, and I really respect the coaches for helping me with that.
Yeah. Let me, while we're on this subject of juniors in there, how big was the, because I'm sure you billeted in each place, right?
Yeah.
How was that? Because I remember how it was for me when I first came over to the US, and I was used to living on my own, and now all of a sudden you were living with a family. How was that for you?
Yeah, the first team when I went to Jamestown, there was a big adjustment for sure. Coming from living by myself, you used to kind of just, you kind of just spend time with yourself. You get used to kind of just being with yourself in your room, kind of doing your stuff. And so like the first Bill family, it took some time for me to kind of open up and kind of be more with the family, which kind of in a way I regret with the first family, that I was the first couple of weeks, I was kind of in my room, just kind of by myself, because I was used to it. And but then I played there for a longer time, and then you start really enjoying each and every family. They all have something special to bring. Some families a little bit better, some families a little bit worse, but most of them all good, and they're supportive. They're there to help the hockey players, and I've found some really, really strong connections that I talk with now during summer. And I for example, when I went to Kenai or Fairbanks with Minnesota this year, I went and saw both families and had a dinner and all that stuff. So it's kind of like you find a little home, and amazing people for sure. So it's been,
so that's been
really
positive. It was a positive experience to be with a billet family.
Yeah. And you kind of, you as a tourist, when you go to another country, for example, you go to the big places, right? You go to the States, you go to New York, you go to Florida, California,
North
Washington.
Carolina.
Yeah. But then as you play in junior hockey, you go to small places like Fairbanks in Alaska, you go to northern Minnesota, you go to upstate New York, Jamestown, and so now you get to experience kind of like the regular American style of living, and how just the culture and Thanksgiving and all these different things. And so it's a lot of learning experiences off the ice, traveling by yourself, it's flying by yourself, and living with different families. So it's been a great experience for sure.
That's awesome. I'm glad we haven't really talked about that on this podcast, and I think it's an important part, and it can be a big deal. It could be, if you're not mentally ready, it can be a tough thing. If you're and you could end up in a really bad situation. So I'm glad you had a good experience. So at what point did you? So was this college thing? So if we're segueing into, all right, you're playing juniors. But at what point were you thinking about college? You mentioned when you went to Jamestown that Niagara University was there and looking. So the whole time is this the transportation path to college? Is that kind of how your mindset?
Yeah, that's why I went over to juniors at the first place. It was to be able to get seen, and every player that goes there, not every, but 99% of the players that play juniors want to go to college.
Yep.
If you play in the United States. And so that's what I went over there to be able to be seen. But then as you start playing for teams, you start to. My first year, I thought a lot more about college. My second year, I really enjoyed the team. We were a great team. I enjoyed the coaches, and so I kind of put college to the side. And I really, really focused on just playing good, being with the guys, enjoying the time playing my last junior season.
Yeah.
And that made me play really well with the team and with the place that I was at. And when you do well where you're at and you showcase that, that's when you can move on to the next level. So that's when you're also focusing in a way on the right things, like what matters most now. So I think that kind of leveled up my game my second year a little bit too.
So you played 2 years. Some people come over and they just play 1 year of juniors because they exhaust their junior eligibility in Sweden, and then they have an extra one over here as their last year juniors. Because of COVID, ended up. Was the plan always to do 2 years, or was the plan to do 1 year? Was it COVID?
2 years.
It was 2 years. Are you glad
Yeah,
that you
finish school and then go over. Yeah.
Yeah. Because you could have, so if you're looking back and let's say COVID wasn't there, would you still have done 2 years of North American juniors, you think? Or would you have played your
Yeah.
last year at J20
Yeah.
National?
So the second year, if you look J20 National, it didn't get affected at all by COVID.
Yeah.
So COVID kind of like in a way died out a little bit for that season that came up there. And so my mindset was, if I've already played 1 year in the Swedish league, junior 20, and if I can move over to play to the United States, where would I grow as much as possible as a player and as a person? How could I develop my game to stay where I'm at, to be kind of comfortable? Just like you were saying before, like it's very easy for Swedish players to, you have your own house, where you're going to be. It's comfortable.
Yeah.
But I like to be like comfortable with being uncomfortable, because then I know I'm going to develop as a person and as a player. So I kind of like throwing myself in different tough situations. So I have to just figure it out. So that was kind of my idea and reason to why I wanted to move. I thought I could grow more going overseas and experiencing.
So your last year in the North American Hockey League was with Minnesota, who was one of the top teams, right? Didn't they go all the way into the playoffs?
Yeah, and so we were a really good team this year. We had a great, you start to realize that when I was playing a lot, and I was one of the, if you consider a top guy in the team, that from the owners of the team to the general manager to the coaching staff to the equipment managers to the players in the team, that it was like a red thread, if you say it like that. Everything was working very well. And so that's when you realize, okay, this is a championship organization. We could go all the way through. And so, we had a great team, a great year playing wise. And, our what do you say, owner of the organization took us out for dinners. We had a lot of team activities. We got very close to each other as players. And then we played, playoffs went through, and I broke my cheekbone. Our last game to win our Midwest division. So we were up 4-1, and I broke my cheekbone. I think 10 minutes left in the third. I went straight to the hospital. Some teeth went out and stuff. And I just cared about, are we going to win? Are we going to win? So we win the game. And I was so happy. The general manager and the coach and everybody in the team came over to the hospital and stuff. And it was a very hectic part of the season at the end of the year. And I chose, so we played the next weekend for Robertson Cup to win the whole NAHL. And so it's one team from each division that goes there. And throughout the whole week, I couldn't practice at all. I went on the ice by myself with a red jersey because I had a broken cheekbone, but it was a tough time for sure. I mean, we're going into the biggest weekend in the season. I have a broken bone, and I'm kind of considering, am I gonna play or not? But I love the guys so much. I really enjoyed this team and the coaches and everything, and I knew I was a big part of it, and so I kind of said it like, yeah, I'm gonna do it. If anything bad happens, it happens. So I put a mouth guard in. I played with Cage, and I told everybody to not say anything about it, so I didn't get extra targeted because I was already pretty much targeted. But so no one, just runs up and punches you in the face or something. And so I played the last weekend there with only one pre-game skate without a red jersey. Played 25 minutes a night, and we played the best team in the league when it comes to amount of points accumulated in the regular season. And so we lost, unfortunately. We could have won. We should have won. We were up 2-0, 6 minutes left. They turned it around. But yeah, amazing season. It was really tough to leave this season. I really enjoyed you guys. And especially leaving a season when I've been talking to so many schools, and I wasn't committed till after the season. So I was like, okay, I brought my everything. It was unfortunate that I broke my cheekbone. If we won everything, could have been committed already.
Woulda, coulda, shoulda.
Yeah, but then it happened afterwards. So I'm very grateful for that. So yeah.
Well, before we go and round out about college, so I know offline we talked about this. So there's a lot of people that ask, how does J20 National or J20 in general in Sweden, how does it compare to the North American Hockey League? And you haven't played in the USHL, but how does it compare to the USHL in your opinion? And I know it's hard to answer, but what's your thoughts on that?
So I played with a lot of players from the USHL that came to the NAHL, and I played by myself, of course, in the junior 20 national in Sweden. And so there's some differences between the leagues, but of course the big difference is the style of play, right? So in the United States, it's smaller rinks, a lot more intense, and a lot more physicality. How the kind of style of coaching, the kind of program set up to practice and all that stuff, less kind of physio training, kind of gym training in the States, more like you take care of yourself to be able to perform on the ice. So it's more result mindset towards the game, rather in Sweden it's more about kind of the process and kind of development. And so when I played junior 20 in Sweden, it was a little more skilled. General players are more skilled, but the level of play in the NA is better than J20. It's just a tiny bit better. USHL is a tiny bit better than the NA too. And so
what's your opinion of how much better is the USHL versus North American Hockey League?
It's a little bit better.
It's not a huge.
It's not a huge difference. I would say the best teams in the NA would be the worst teams in the USHL. So it's it's not the biggest of difference. We had some USHL dropouts that play. They're not maybe the best players in the NA, but like average good players, and some good ones that come from the USHL. It's a little bit different of a playing style in the USHL. It's a little bit of younger players.
Yeah.
And it's from what I've heard, it's more skilled. So from USHL players to transfer to the college style, where it's a lot more physicality, older style players, it's tougher for USHL players. And I've heard some guys that played in USHL that came back to the NA, or that played in the NA, went to USHL, came back. that the style of play in the NA reflects a lot more the professional style of play, because it's more heavier, older players. So it's a little bit different style, but if you put a team against each other, the USHL teams would most often win.
Yeah.
But then it's not the most big of a difference otherwise, I would say.
Did you feel that you were well prepared coming in to the North American Hockey League as a hockey player? Not mentally, but and all the things you kind of talked about, but as a hockey player, did your skill translate?
So yeah, you have to be really adaptive, right? So some players, I took 2 years. Some players go there last year. And so now you have so much to adjust to that it can be hard to hit and you know, break through the first year. For me, it took a little bit of adjustment. I think the skill and everything I had from Swedish hockey translated well into Swedish hockey. But translating into the American style, now you have to be able to keep your technique while moving your feet. So small things like that makes so you definitely have to transfer your kind of style of play. And but yeah, I feel like I could translate my stuff into the American style. It just took a little bit of an adjustment.
Yeah, that's great. All right, now exciting time. Northern Michigan, NCAA D1, the pipeline to a college degree, but a professional mindset of what's the big difference between and a pipeline to the NHL or AHL. I mean, there is going to play NCAA D1. You sure haven't closed any doors to the NHL on the contract, yeah. Right? What's your thoughts on? I mean, now you're committed. You are that's where you're going, and you could be there for 4 years.
Yeah.
Walk us through like the thought pattern of how that and what's going to be the big differences between the North American Hockey League as an organization versus going to a college.
Yeah, I of course, I mean, I don't have the experience yet myself, so I don't necessarily know everything to what's to come. I usually work out with a lot of college players in Sweden. I've done it for years, and especially this summer, I'm asking a lot of questions to kind of get an expectation of to what's to come. But they can only like show me the door. I have to be the one to walk through it and experience college myself to be able to understand the differences truly. And yeah, I think, you know, school is going to be a big part. 4 years is a huge commitment too. And my goal is to, you know, just like I had this year with my NA team, was to play as well as I possibly can this upcoming season, because that's what's going to bring the best opportunities to move on. And if the opportunity comes for me to maybe go play in the NHL, two-way AHL contracts after one, or that would be optimal to go as quick as possible. But yeah, if I could play a couple of years and then move forward, that would be my main goal. So yeah, just taking one season at a time, make sure to go through school well and try to win championships. That's kind of my mindset.
Yeah. No, I think it's going to be fun. There's definitely I see that you have a Lexan player on your roster, so everything should be fine.
Yeah, yeah, hopefully.
And you're going up to Michigan, and a little bit different climate than Alaska, but I mean, what an awesome spot to be in. Beautiful country. A lot of people go to Michigan, especially in the northern Michigan area, and in the summertime, and probably not so nice in the wintertime, but
yeah, it gets really cold. Like I played upper part of Minnesota pretty much this whole season, and with the winds, with the Great Lakes, it gets colder than in Alaska.
Yeah,
it gets extremely cold up there. So, you know, but that's just, I guess that's hockey. You play in the cold areas, and that's where where it's from. So
You're going to be well taken care of. You're going to have your own massage team and physio.
yeah, yeah,
And
we got hot tubs and saunas and stuff like that. So hopefully I can keep myself a little warm.
yeah, a
in the
little bit.
season.
I mean, mentioning that, I mean, it is a little bit of a different setup. And the professionalism, all of a sudden, you go from North American Hockey League, which isn't bad, but they're still kind of they don't have huge budgets. They have a lot of expense, and then now you're going into a collegiate setting and much more staff. Facilities could be completely different, and travel, and
Yeah,
now you're going to be treated like a pro.
yeah, yeah. That's of course, that's nice. NA, you definitely in the NAHL, you definitely don't have the most opportunities when it comes to all the different, hot tub, cold tubs, all that kind of stuff. Food wise, you don't get the best food on the road and stuff like that. Our team, our owner, just like I talked about before, great organization, went out for personal team dinners. So we definitely kind of got treated extra well with Minnesota. And yeah, I think that helps players, stay healthy, stay, uh, good recover facilities, good opportunities outside from the ice. And I mean, that's just pros. So
Yeah.
that's just nice. Yeah.
So last thing, I always ask the guest about, and normally you have an older guest that says that I asked the question, if you met yourself at age 17, but you were just there. So what advice would you give, maybe to yourself, but maybe more about the other, take the guy from Sweden who is coming into hockey gymnasium, or maybe the guy that is thinking about coming over and playing juniors in the US or Canada. I mean, there is some options in Canada, although harder. But what would be your advice now, since you've gone through it? You've finished. I played my full eligibility in the US, and now I'm going to college. What
Yeah.
would be your advice?
Yeah, if you want to take the leap from the Swedish hockey to the US, it's my advice would be to not fear it. Kind of, it's a great experience both on and off the ice. So as you go over to the States, you should when you join a team, you should play full. You shouldn't like be scared to be the guy that scores the most goals in a team. You shouldn't be scared to play the toughest. You should be there to take your spot in a team and play hard. So
Don't
that's kind
don't
of my advice.
don't do average. Don't be log on.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And so yeah, and that's the main thing, an American coach prefers a American player if he's as good as the Swedish players. You got to stand out if you want to you got to be there to really make a difference. So
Yeah.
you can't be afraid to do any of that. So let go of the fear, be courageous, and play hard. That's kind of my advice.
Awesome, awesome. It's going to be fun to kind of keep up with this now. Maybe it'll be a short stint and get some looks. I hope that you stay and finish your degree, and nobody will ever take that away from you.
Yeah.
And you certainly have a bright future in front of you, and a sharp head on your shoulder. So take advantage of it. So thanks for jumping on. And we'll release this. We got a few in front of you here during the summertime here, but it'll
Yeah.
be really, really timely right about main camps and people fighting for spots in the North American Hockey League and beyond. So
Yeah.
enjoyed the conversation, and we'll stay in touch for sure.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
All right, thanks.